Have you ever wondered how a boy from a quiet little town could grow up to change an entire language? Today, we explore the life of a man whose words still shape the way millions of people speak, think, and feel. A man who understood love, ambition, jealousy, betrayal, and the human heart with extraordinary depth. His name was William Shakespeare. You may already know his famous works, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello. But these are not simply old stories. They are powerful reflections of life itself. They reveal the beauty and darkness inside every human soul. What makes his story even more inspiring is this. Shakespeare was not born into wealth. He did not come from a powerful family. He did not attend a famous university, and yet he became the most celebrated writer in history. So, if you have ever felt ordinary, if you have ever doubted your own potential, then his story may change the way you see your future. Because before he became a legend, William Shakespeare was simply a boy with imagination, curiosity, and a dream. It was April of 1564 in the small English town of Stratford-upon-Avon. The town was peaceful, with narrow streets, wooden houses, and a quiet river flowing through it. People lived simple lives there, working as farmers, traders, and craftsmen. In that modest town, a baby boy was born to John and Mary Shakespeare. They named him William. His father, John Shakespeare, made leather gloves and sold them in the local market. He was respected in the community and known as a hard-working man. His mother, Mary, came from a prosperous farming family and brought warmth and strength to the home. William grew up in a busy household with many brothers and sisters. The house was often filled with noise, laughter, and conversation. But even at a young age, William seemed different from the others. He watched people carefully. He listened to how they spoke. He noticed how they laughed, argued, and cried. Without knowing it, he was studying human nature long before he ever wrote a play. In those days, there were no televisions, no phones, and no internet. Stories were one of life's greatest forms of entertainment. Traveling actors would arrive in town and perform plays in the streets, and young William watched them with fascination. He loved legends, folk tales, and heroic stories from history. Each story fed his imagination and made his love for language grow stronger. At around 7 years old, William began school. There he studied Latin, history, poetry, and classical literature. He read the works of great ancient writers and absorbed their ideas deeply. But he was not only a student of books, he also loved the natural world. He walked through fields, listened to birds, and watched the river flow past his town. Yet, while his childhood may have looked peaceful from the outside, trouble soon entered his family's life. His father's business began to fail. Money became tight. The family that had once lived comfortably now faced financial hardship. William watched the stress grow in his parents' faces. He learned early that life could change without warning. He learned that success and comfort could disappear quickly. These lessons stayed with him. Years later, he would fill his plays with the same truths, that life is uncertain, fortune rises and falls, and human beings must face struggle with courage. Even as a boy, William loved playing with words. He made up little poems, he entertained others with stories. He enjoyed pretending to be different characters. No one in Stratford knew it then, but the boy with the bright imagination was slowly becoming something extraordinary. And the next chapter of his life would change everything. When London's theaters reopened, Shakespeare returned stronger than before. He joined one of the most successful acting companies in England, a group known as the Lord Chamberlain's Men. This was more than just another job.
It was the opportunity that would change his life forever. Now, Shakespeare was not only writing plays, he was performing in them, shaping them, and helping bring them to life on stage. And this was the period when his genius truly began to shine. He wrote stories of young love and heartbreaking tragedy in Romeo and Juliet. He explored revenge, grief, and uncertainty in Hamlet. He showed the danger of unchecked ambition in Macbeth. He showed the destructive power of jealousy in Othello. These were not simple plays. They were deep studies of the human soul. They made audiences question themselves. They forced people to confront emotions they often tried to hide. That is why Shakespeare became different from every other writer around him. He did not merely entertain people, he understood them. He gave language to feelings many had experienced but could never explain. By the late 1590s, he had become one of the most famous playwrights in England. But Shakespeare was not satisfied with success alone. He wanted something greater, a place where his stories could live and grow on an even larger stage. And in 1599, that dream became reality. Shakespeare and his company built their own theater. They called it the Globe Theater. Imagine the excitement of that moment. A massive open-air theater rising above London, crowds gathering from every part of the city, actors preparing backstage, thousands waiting in anticipation for the curtain to rise. For Shakespeare, this was more than a building. It was the home of his imagination, the place where his greatest works would come alive. At the Globe, he presented some of the most powerful plays ever written. Julius Caesar examined politics, loyalty, and betrayal. King Lear explored family, pride, and heartbreak. The Tempest reflected on forgiveness, power, and redemption. His writing grew deeper with time. As he aged, his work became more emotional, more philosophical, more personal. He had now experienced struggle, success, praise, criticism, wealth, and loss, and all of it entered his writing. His characters felt real because they carried the same complexity as real people. By the early 1600s, Shakespeare was no longer just admired, he was wealthy. Unlike many writers of his time, he earned substantial money from his plays. Because he owned shares in the Globe Theater, he profited whenever performances were held. His published works also brought him income, and his success allowed him to buy valuable property. Eventually, he purchased one of the finest houses in Stratford, called New Place. The glovemaker's son had become one of the richest playwrights in England. Then, history shifted once again. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died. Her successor, King James I, took the throne. No one knew at first what this would mean for the theater world. Would the new king support actors? Would the theaters survive? Shakespeare soon received his answer. King James admired his work greatly. In fact, the king honored his company by granting them royal patronage. They were renamed the King's Men, the official acting company of the royal court. This was one of the highest honors any playwright could receive. The boy who had once grown up in a small town with no special advantages was now writing for kings. His rise was nearly unbelievable. But even after reaching the top, Shakespeare still had more to write, more to say, and more of himself to pour into the stories that would define his final years.
As William grew older, his responsibilities grew with him. By the time he reached his teenage years, life had already taught him difficult lessons.
His family's financial troubles continued, and the future no longer seemed secure. William understood that dreams alone were not enough. He would need to find his own path in life. Then, at just 18 years old, his life took a dramatic turn. He fell in love with a woman named Anne Hathaway. She was intelligent, independent, and several years older than him. Their relationship surprised many people in their community. Soon, Anne became pregnant before they were married. In that time, this created serious social pressure. So the couple married quickly in 1582. Only months later, their first child, Susanna, was born. Within a few more years, they had twins, Hamnet and Judith. And suddenly, William Shakespeare was not just a young husband, he was a father of 3 children, with a family depending on him. But there was one major problem. He had no stable income. His father's business was still struggling, and William had little interest in following the same trade. He had no wealth, no title, no clear profession. Only imagination, only talent, only a deep hunger to create. Then came one of the greatest mysteries in literary history. Between 1585 and 1592, Shakespeare seemed to disappear from the historical record. These years are often called his lost years because no one knows exactly what he was doing. Some historians believe he may have worked as a school teacher. Others think he joined traveling actors and learned theater through performance. Some even suggest he fled legal trouble and left Stratford unexpectedly. Whatever happened during those years, one truth is clear. When Shakespeare reappeared, he was no longer just a village dreamer. He was in London, the busiest, most ambitious city in England, ready to build a new life. London in the late 1500s was alive with energy. The city was crowded, noisy, and full of opportunity. Its theaters attracted actors, poets, and writers from all over the country. Shakespeare arrived there with almost nothing. No powerful connections, no great wealth, no famous family name. But he carried something more valuable than all of those things: raw talent, fierce determination, and a mind overflowing with stories. He began working in theater, likely as an actor at first. He watched experienced performers closely. He studied how audiences reacted. He learned what made people laugh, cry, and sit in silence. And before long, he started writing his own plays. At first, they were entertaining and lively, but with every script, his skill grew stronger. He realized theater could be more than entertainment. It could explore the deepest truths of life. It could reveal the beauty of love, the danger of ambition, the pain of betrayal, the madness of jealousy. By 1592, Shakespeare was becoming known in London's theater world. Not everyone welcomed his success. A famous writer named Robert Greene insulted him publicly, calling him an upstart crow, a nobody pretending to be a great writer. But Shakespeare did not argue. He did not complain. He answered with the only thing that mattered: better work. He wrote more. He improved more. He pushed himself harder. And slowly, the critics were forced to respect him. Then, disaster struck. In 1593, a deadly plague spread through London. Theaters were shut down. Actors lost their work. The city entered fear and uncertainty. Once again, Shakespeare faced hardship, but instead of giving up, he adapted. Unable to write for the stage, he turned to poetry. He wrote long narrative poems that became highly successful and brought him both money and recognition. Even during crisis, he found a way to keep creating. That ability to turn obstacles into opportunity would become one of the defining patterns of his life. And when the theaters finally reopened, William Shakespeare was ready to rise higher than ever before.